Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. What started as all things related to brain health and wellness has morphed into largely brain injury health and wellness, with occasional other neurological topics. My mission remains the same, to help you on the path to a healthier brain. So, without further ado, let's get into the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today is Jamie Arber. Jamie is the executive director of the Supported Living Group. He is a clinician, executive, and systems strategist whose work sits at the intersection of trauma recovery, brain injury rehabilitation, and community integration. With a deep background in clinical community psychology and over 15 years of leadership in the brain injury field, Jamie has developed and implemented innovative models of care that challenges the traditional institutional approach and reasserts the importance of meaning, autonomy, and structure in the lives of survivors. From a clinical standpoint, Jamie's approach is rooted in a recognition of the hierarchical nature of human needs, psychological, physiological, and existential, and how brain injury often fractures the scaffolding that supports identity and purpose. His work aims to reassemble that scaffolding through integrated supports that are clinically sound, individually responsive, and embedded in the community. As executive director of the Supported Living Group, Jamie led the organization to become Connecticut's top-ranked provider of community-based services in its category, delivering over 15,000 hours of support weekly to specialized populations. His leadership has not only elevated service quality, but also transformed operational systems, expanding markets, securing sustainable funding, and advocating policy change through direct engagement with state officials. Jamie's clinical insights and strategic vision have resulted in the development of specialized programs for survivors with complex neurobehavioral profiles, including vocational rehabilitation initiatives that emphasize not just function, but dignity and contribution. Jamie is a licensed professional counselor with EMDR certification and a certified brain injury specialist. He has presented on neurorehabilitation, systems transformation, and trauma-informed care across a variety of platforms. His work is marked by a relentless commitment to reintegrating marginalized individuals into the fabric of society, not simply as recipients of care, but as full participants in life. I am so excited for this conversation today, Jamie. Thank you for being here, and thank you for bearing with me through that beautiful bio that you had there.
Thank you. It was longer than I expected.
That's all right. It always serves as a really good reminder of all of the wonderful things that you've done in the time that you've been working. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And the first question I always have for my guests is kind of what got you to all of these wonderful things that you've done? What led you to doing this?
I fell into the field back in 2010. I dropped in after I got my master's degree, worked for a mom and pop brain injury organization. I was kind of floundering around what I wanted to do with my career and took a job and very, very rapidly connected with the individuals we were providing services to. I noticed very, very quickly I was a survivor of a brain injury myself, wrong place, wrong time, was a victim of an assault, and it was never really discussed in terms of the risk factors and what the long-term consequences could have been. And, the first day of working in the field, sitting down with a couple of service participants and noticing scars in exactly the same places that I had, I think that assisted me and motivated me to try and assist the individual we provide services to find purpose and to be in a place where they feel respected and they have opportunities to grow and develop, which wasn't always the case, I think, in this field.
And I think that personal connection always serves as a good reminder of why we're doing what we're doing. So often I'll have guests on that they have either themselves experienced something or someone that they love. And I think that gives us the fuel for doing what we do on a regular basis.
100%. Everything that I've done has been driven, I think, from a fear of it could easily be me sitting where our participants are. So, and trying to give as much back as possible. I think it's important to do that. And it's fared me well in terms of giving back, and my personal and career trajectory, I've been rewarded while working in the field, which has been nice.
So what does the Supported Living Group do?
We provide the whole range of services on the disability support spectrum. Predominantly, we are a Medicaid provider on the waiver program in Connecticut. That's our bread and butter for brain injury support. It's a state and federal program for individuals that qualify who have brain injury support needs. We also provide services to individuals on the autism spectrum, elder care services. A lot of people would probably be more familiar with that elder care platform. Senior care PCA care, those types of things. We do vocational rehabilitation, and we also provide private pay services across the board for disability supports.
So you're in Connecticut. Are there other organizations like you in the state?
No, there are other organizations that provide services on the brain injury waiver program, but nobody provides services in the way that we do. We have an internalized clinical component. So we have a neuropsychologist on staff, occupational therapists, 2 board certified behavioral analysts to work with our participants. And then as an agency, we're the only agency in the state that have invested in bricks and mortar locations. So we have 3 locations. They're more than 20,000 square feet each, where we have our administrative levels, and then we have our creative arts programming in 2 of those locations, which is Avon and Bethany, and vocational programming, where we provide pre-vocational supports as well as supportive employment opportunities to individuals with brain injuries. Most of the other providers stay within that home care feel, where they're just dropping into the individual's residential location, providing a few hours of support, and then leaving. So we do things a little bit differently. And it's geared towards giving that sense of purpose and community, which is why we've invested in the way that we have.
And then how has the model that you have allowed you to make the growth that you have? Is it just because you're the only ones that do it, or?
I think the investment, the owners of the company, Christopher Brisson and Kimberly Brisson, believe the same way that I believe in terms of giving back to the participants we're providing services to. So in terms of giving back, it's that sense of purpose. So when you provide a sense of purpose and you invest in the company and you invest in the services that you're providing, that reputation gets out there. We really don't have a lot of turnover of individuals that we're providing services to leaving the company, because there really isn't anybody else out there that competes with what we do. And then individuals wanting to come in, our reputation is statewide. Typically, as soon as a referral chooses to meet with us, they make their mind up that they want to work with us. Connecticut's a little bit different, that it's a conflict-free referral state, which is a little bit different to some of the other states around the country. And what that actually means is the care managers that oversee the individual care plans of each individual on the waiver program, the brain injury waiver program, can't specifically say you should call the supported living group. They have to kind of say, here's a whole list of provider agencies. They can't say whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And all they can say is, this is a list of provider agencies we recommend that you call. And there are some provider agencies that specifically started their name with an A to know that they're going to be first and foremost, but they don't offer great services. Unfortunately, it takes survivors and their families time to navigate through the system. It's not rudimentary by any sense. And we often get family members and survivors ask, why didn't we know about you 2-3 years ago? So we see that a lot. So we've got a good reputation in the field. We don't have a lot of turnover in individuals that we provide support services to. We also offer agencies subsidized housing. The housing market is very, very difficult at the moment. It's very expensive in Connecticut. So Christopher and Kim have invested back in to try and provide affordable housing options for some of our participants as well, who have 24-hour needs. It just helps with community stability. If you can provide a nice residential location with supports wrapped in at an affordable price, normally leads to that individual being stable for the long term, which is beneficial for them.
And for people who aren't aware, what does that waiver cover for services?
So the waiver covers for services, independent living skills training. It can cover companion services, PCA services called recovery assistant, which is hands-on care with educational components. PCA is more traditional assistance with bathing, those types of elements. It covers home modification. There's a budget for that. Technology, if somebody needs an iPad or a laptop or something of that nature. Cognitive behavioral services, care management, nursing, Meals on Wheels. So that it covers a wide array of elements dependent upon each individual's need. So there's a service budget. There are 4 different levels of care within the waiver program. The fundamental piece is you've got to have the need of at least 2 ADLs to get onto the program. And then your support needs are such that you can live independently with supports in the community successfully. So there's that. There is a wait list for the waiver. The official statement is it's 6 years. The unofficial statement is it's more like the 8 years, and we're also seeing, we're getting a lot of feedback from family members in the community where individuals are being transitioned back into the community from acute care settings, which are specialized hospital settings, which deal in like neurorehabilitation units. They're getting pushed back into the community rather than on the brain injury waiver, on the PCA care waiver, which is
Mm,
kind of, it's a little crazy to me, because if you've had somebody on a neurobehavioral unit, which oftentimes is locked, neurobehavioral for 2 years, how is that individual going to be successful coming back with a tiny support budget under PCA level of care? The agencies themselves don't understand what they're getting in terms of the client or the participant, and their needs are often not met. So that individual typically fails in the community, only to go back into the system again, which is expensive for the state. The overall goal of the waiver program is to allow individuals to leave institutional settings, which are hugely expensive to the state, to move back into the community with support, which is less expensive. But if they're not being brought out on the appropriate waiver program with the appropriate supports, you're going to develop a Groundhog Day where the individual is just floating in between institutional long-term care settings and the community again. And all it takes is one bad discharge, and that individual's health, well-being, safety is compromised. Also, their family members may not be willing to chance it again, and that individual is then destined to be stuck in a long-term care setting. And if they're in their 30s, that's not a great life.
right, right. Why is that wait list so long?
I
To be
think,
blunt, yeah.
yeah, I believe that the investment just isn't there
Sure.
from the state. Unfortunately, I don't think they see the big picture, because you look at neighboring states, Massachusetts, New York, they're open. They have open spaces on their waiver plans, and they're very large and robust waiver plans. It's not capped at 700 individuals. They're looking at thousands of individuals being served. There is an obvious expense to go along with the services being provided. However, as I said, the expense is far less than these individuals being served in an institutional setting. So I personally struggle with it, because there's a huge need, with more and more information coming out week upon week with neurological testing, CTE, these types of elements. There is a huge need for these services. And even from our private pay area, the cost of services to families can't afford to privately pay for 24/7 care. It's very, very expensive. And even somebody with a robust trust, something of that nature, you've only got, most people, 8 years would be max. And that would be running into millions of dollars of service support. It's unsustainable. So these services are definitely needed. Connecticut is restrictive at the moment. Our reimbursement rates are very, very low, and it's not kept up with the cost of care index.
Mhm.
There is a two-tiered system in Connecticut as well, which is becoming more and more apparent, where self-directed unionized workers get preferential treatment in terms of their rates of pay, as opposed to agencies. So the agencies
Interesting.
that have all the quality assurance responsibility, documentation responsibility, care expectation responsibilities are being paid less per hour than individual self-directed employees with no oversight. And it's getting to a point now, you just do the numbers, and there's going to be agencies that are leaving the space because they just can't afford to. And
Mhm.
the big concern within the field is private equity coming in. And if you've got a number of agencies that are financially vulnerable, that opens up an opportunity for private equity to come in and grab 6, 7 agencies all at once, and then choice diminishes, and the quality of care has the potential to further diminish. So
Right.
that's kind of what's going on in Connecticut. And to go back to your original question, why are there just that number of slots, and why is there such a wait list?
Yeah.
Investment.
Yeah.
Brain injury isn't sexy.
Mm,
It's
mhm.
not, it's not something where the media are looking at it and running stories that's not going on. But even in terms of the autism waiver in Connecticut for individuals that have IQs above 70, their wait list is, they're looking at like 10 years to get onto a wait list that is very marginally funded. So there's big problems occurring.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm thinking we'll come back and talk about that part later,
Yeah.
what we can do. But when we're talking about trying to help all these individuals and get them out of the institutions, get them back into the community, what are some of those challenges that they're going to face that they're going to need support for based on what you've seen and things like that?
I think the biggest challenge is typically it's the first year
Mm.
of being out, coming back into the community, and as I said, being on an appropriate waiver program. It used, when I first got into the field, individuals would transition specifically onto the acquired brain injury waiver program, which would give them a more robust budget for that first year, and you could stabilize. What's happened in the last probably 5 to 7 years, individuals have started being transitioned into the community under a smaller waiver program. It's called Money Follows the Person, but it's Money Follows a Person ABI. So they have a service budget of around about $60,000 for the first year. Sounds like a lot, but in reality, if you're looking at somebody who needs 24/7 care, it isn't a lot. The other piece is the waivers were originally created for straight brain injury, strokes, and of that nature, car accidents, something of that nature. What we're seeing more and more often now is dual diagnosis, even tri-diagnosis, where you have the brain injury, mental health, and addiction coming back into the community. And if it's $60,000 for the first year, as much as you want to try and scaffold things, that individual is going to be left alone at some point. And if they're coming into the community with like a subsidized housing certificate, they're not moving into Greenwich. They're not going into the Darien. They're going into some of the lower income areas where affordable rent is placed. And unfortunately, there is a larger access to substances in those environments. So the opportunity for failure is far higher. And a lot of the bigger agencies, they just don't take the cases because they know they're going to try their best for a year, trying to keep it, trying to do their best for the individual, managing the agitation to the families who are not happy about the service plan. And then once that year ends, what has the potential to happen is the family are unhappy or the individual is unhappy. They haven't had a true representation of the services. So they just go to another provider and you've invested for a year and then it falls away, or the individual simply transitions back into that long-term care. Honesty is the best policy, I find, with individuals transitioning in the families, letting them know this is what it's going to be for that first year, and we're going to have to work together to try and stabilize as much as possible. By having the programs that we have as well, you're resetting the individual to, okay, I get up in the morning, I go into the program, I've got friends, I don't want to jeopardize this. And it gives that sense of consistency rather than the individual just sitting home all day. There's only so many Murray reruns you can watch before you get yourself into trouble. And we see a reduction in problematic behaviors because of, the cognitive stimulation individuals get, the reason to get up in the morning, the sense of purpose, these types of things. And also we have socialization opportunities on the weekend and in the evening. So that can be managed. Some of the older guys, they go out for steak night on Friday and elements like that. We've linked in with a few different community organizations as well. Healing by Growing Farms is an opportunity for vocational agricultural therapy that goes on with some of our individuals, which is a great opportunity for individuals to get their hands in the ground, do something different, but also they have a sense of, I've achieved something when that flower grows, or they're cultivating a crop that's happened, or they're looking after specific animals on their, they have a micro farm, and we see the benefits of that in terms of building confidence. Again, rather than staying home.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like a phenomenal partnership,
Yeah.
getting them out there and doing things. And I've seen a lot of different places like that here in Minnesota trying to make connections with community organizations where they can go out and do a little bit of work and do something and get them out and give them a sense of purpose, which is really, really great. And I also have had several patients come in that live in the low income housing, and it's a high stress area for them to live. They're
Yeah.
trying to recover, and they're around all of this stress because their neighbors are doing drugs or selling drugs,
Yes.
and there's violence going on in the buildings, and so that just adds another little layer there for them.
They're often, although brain injury is an invisible injury, the reality is in those environments, the vulnerabilities are spotted very, very quickly by the neighbors and by individuals in that community. And unfortunately, the individuals are preyed on if staff are not there. And I go back to it, the waivers weren't originally designed for this. The other element is if you do have a substance abuse issue, if you've been in a neurorehabilitation unit, their job is to work with you on neurorehabilitation, not on a historical substance abuse issue. So what can happen a lot of the time is, they're doing great. They've gone for outings with staff. They've gone to the grocery store. That's all well and good. But when the individual transitions back into the community, and it's going to be a community of their choice where they can find affordable housing, the same triggers that were there before they had their brain injury are there again. And this time the brain injury is there to add a layer of complexity, because now you can have even higher impulsivity, perseveration, all these different things that go around that trigger. And if the individual doesn't have the appropriate services, it's only a matter of time. You can't blame the individual, you blame the lack of supports around them.
And we do know that there's a higher rate of substance use and abuse in people that have brain injuries, especially if they have that history.
Yeah.
So having those supports is huge for them.
Yeah, I think that goes into, there's a huge need for individuals transitioning from incarceration to have screenings for brain injury, and to be able to access some level of support when they transition back into the community, whether that be in addition to halfway house, and then they have support groups, those types of things. But there should be some element of brain injury specific supports to stop the recidivism, which is only natural if the individual has an undiagnosed brain injury.
Yeah. I actually did an episode on the show here probably a month ago or so, and talked about that exact topic.
Yeah.
Because it is such an area of need that needs to grow in every state. I think one of the articles that I read, there were several states, I want to say like somewhere between 10 and 15, that actually have a decent program for the correctional facilities for educating their employees on brain injury. But that's still a huge number that don't have that.
And so, as I said, to incorporate it into the parole situation, and then transitioning back into the community is a huge element. If the states and the federal government truly want to reduce down recidivism.
So thinking big picture moving forward, I have a couple kind of future thinking questions for you. One is to kind of address all the things that we've been talking about, the difficulties with the timeframes and the wait lists and everything. What do we need from state and or federal level to make some changes on this?
I think overall it's investment. It's investment because if the state and federal government are investing appropriately into these programmings, the quality of care goes up, because the agencies that are doing a good job, their aim, such as ours, is to raise the bar. If you're raising the bar, that's how you get referrals. I mean, it's simple business, and that's how referrals stay. So the other agencies that are providing support services look, and they understand, well, we're going to have to do something here in order to match and to get referrals. The other element is there needs to be a change in this two-tiered approach. I don't know why it's come about. In Connecticut, just to give you an example, there hasn't been a rate increase on independent living skills training services since 2014, which you're kind of scratching your head. Why is that? For the agencies, not for the private. For those self-directed, unionized employees, there's been rate increases consistently where those individuals are making more than $40 an hour to provide that service. But for the agencies, there hasn't. But what there has been is increasing expectations in terms of administrative levels of services oversight, which agencies are not reimbursed for. So there needs to be some element of parity. If it's that, given the strength of the unions, they can't match, and there should be support services incorporated into the waiver programs that are agency specific, whether that be care management, whether that be, or it would be classed as case management rather than care management, or more group associated services like group ILST, which is truly instructional, elements like that. Because outside of that, it's going to get to a level where agencies will just simply retreat back and look to just service the private pay groupings, which is workers' comp and elements of that nature. And that's detrimental to the individuals that truly need the services, that can't afford those, they're not falling into the category of workers' comp, and they don't have large trusts to support them in the long term getting private pay support services. So I think clear consistent and continual investment into the waiver services, recognition of the true level of the issues at hand.
And then knowing that on the federal level, we have some changes coming with all the disability programs. How does that throw a whole wrench in this plan that we need to increase funding?
I think on the federal level, the reality is it's less expensive to provide supports in the community than it is in institutional settings. So at the federal level, they know that. So therefore, you've got to invest in community-based supports. Brain injury isn't something that can be fudged. You have neuropsych assessments. There's a lot of assessments that go on consistently over a period of time. Brain injury typically doesn't get better over a period of time. Neurological aging and difficulties associated with neurological aging actually occur sooner for this population. That's well documented, that's well known. So I feel as though in this spectrum with this population, it's not as at threat as other populations. Although the injury for a lot of individuals can be invisible, the testing elements that go into it, and the supports around them in terms of neuropsychologists and those types of elements will always advocate against any cuts that come down the pike. And the reality is, I mean, for Connecticut, they're underfunding the program as it is. You can't cut anything else out because it will begin to fall apart pretty rapidly. That's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. So now here's a wishful thinking. Where do you think we're headed in the world of TBI in the next 5 years or so?
It's interesting because technology is taking these leaps and bounds at this moment in time with Neuralink and elements like that. I'm hopeful that there may be more and more adaptive equipment that becomes available to assist individuals that have specific left-sided weakness, aphasia, those types of things, to assist them to get back to a higher level of independence and functioning. I hope that there will be, alongside that technology, advances in medical procedures when brain injury first occur to allow recovery rates to be higher. And I'm hopeful that we can identify an appropriate level of funding across the nation or even across the world, because this isn't just a Connecticut or USA problem. You know, there are companies and organizations in the UK that I follow that are exactly the same. Like, I'm complaining about there not being a ton of funding here, but compared to the UK, it's night and day. They're begging for paper clips, NHS associated charitable organizations, and they're having to fundraise for everything. Whereas, we do have specific funds, but I'm hoping that the correct amount of funds is put in this area, because the individuals that we serve and support are some of the most vulnerable. And they lose everything. After that injury, the person they were up until the moment that injury happened goes. It's almost like a shadow. Everyone's talking about Stranger Things, almost like you go into the upside down. And it's a shadow person of yourself. And we see that, and you're having to help the individual rebuild again. And the story, coming from a clinical background, you're seeing individuals struggling with redeveloping a sense of self in the immediacy, whereas as a child, it takes years to develop that sense of self. Typically, you've not finished developing that sense of self until you're in your late teens, early 20s. And all of a sudden, this injury happens, and you're no longer that archetype. I'm a father, I am a banker, I have got 3 children, I drive this car, I live in this type of house because I've worked hard, I have this amount of money in the bank account, this is my goal to retire. That all just disappears overnight. All of a sudden, you're being told potentially when to get up, when to take medications. You're having these angry outbursts and you don't know why, because those connections between subconscious and conscious are compromised, and you lose that fault in between. And this is the struggle with this and this is why this population needs investment to be protected and cared for, because it's the decent thing to do.
Yeah, having been there myself not that long ago, people who've listened to the show for plenty of time now know that it took me almost 2 years to get back to work as a nurse practitioner. And so that rug gets pulled out from you so quickly, and life is forever changed. And I call myself Mandy 2.0 now because it's a little different than it used to be. But I am back to work part-time, which is
It's great.
great compared to a lot of people that I see. And every day I'm careful not to take for granted what I've gotten back because of that. But then I see all of these people that need the assistance, like the population that you serve, that we still need to do more for that population.
And it's tough because it's so, I think the medical model looks to categorize
Yeah.
individuals specifically, category A, category B. Everybody's different. And no one injury is the same because
Mhm.
of the personality characteristics that were within the individual before and then after the injury. So, you may end up with a neuropsych evaluation which shows exactly the same deficits for two individuals, but the way those deficits are presented are completely different, and they need two different, very specific types of support in order to
Mhm.
be successful. That's the struggle, I think, for a lot of individuals that are looking into this field and trying to justify service plans and budgets because
Mhm.
it's not nice and neat. And a lot of the time, individual doesn't show any external signs of injury.
Mm. Yeah. I borrowed the phrase from somebody along the way, once you've seen one concussion, you've seen one concussion,
Yeah, that's
because
it.
every brain injury is different.
Yeah.
There are comorbidities that go along with it. There are the mental health aspects of it. There are just so many factors that come in to say what kind of supports one individual needs versus a different individual.
And therapeutically, it's so, so difficult. I mean, we see in Connecticut as a cost saving measure a lot of state associated group support services. You can't do group therapy with this problem. From my perspective, it doesn't work. Even individualized therapies have to be individually tailored to each individual you're sitting with. And the
Mhm.
majority of clinicians are not trained in brain injury and they struggle with it. They don't want to take clients on because they can't bill effectively for it. Because if you're trying to develop a clinical therapeutic counseling plan, and you've got to show progress, but the individual has short-term memory issues, you're going to have the same discussion each and every session. So
Yeah.
what are you working on? It has to be very, very tailored. And that's another struggle in terms of helping individuals feel a sense of security and happiness. It has to be individualized. Group doesn't work, and there are
Yeah.
no shortcuts. I think that's the key. There are no shortcuts to this.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum it all up.
Yeah.
There are no shortcuts. There's no magic bullet that can fix everything. There's some really cool research going on, but it's still years away from practice
Yeah.
to actually make any difference. And it's yeah, there's some really cool things coming, but it takes time to get there, and there's a lot of work in the process.
100%.
A lot. So, that said, what are some of your, I guess, the most rewarding things that you've done in this space?
I think seeing the individual growth of our service participants is super, super rewarding. Watching individuals, a creative arts program that we've put together has been really, really beneficial to individuals that have participated within it. At this moment in time, we just launched the Bradley Airport. It's an international airport in Connecticut. They are displaying a whole grouping of our work, and our artists are getting the recognition they want. And it was interesting. One of our individuals, Greg, said, "I wanna go there, and I want to be there to let people know that I created this because they need to see me and understand that I'm capable of doing this." And it was like, yeah, 100%. And I think it's rewarding seeing people grow and develop, seeing individuals find that sense of purpose is rewarding. And seeing the company grow has been rewarding because it shows you're doing something right. And, we've got a management team here that care. They work very, very hard. Some of the hardest working managers in any field, as far as I'm concerned. If you're managing 8 24/7 cases of behaviorally challenging individuals who can come up with weird and wonderful things every day of the week, and they do it day in, day, and they care. And
Mhm.
we've kind of got a philosophy where we treat everybody as though they are a family member, and that's been in place since Chris started the agency. And it doesn't matter how big we get. I will always know the names of every client within the agency. I'll always be every conservator has my cell phone number. Every conservator has Chris's cell phone number, Kim's cell phone. Because if there's an issue going on and our program managers or regional managers are not addressing it immediately, we want to hear about it. And it's, we don't manage from ivory towers. It's not the way that we operate. And a problem that could be fixed in 5 minutes on a phone call on a Friday, if you let it go until Monday, it's, and people have to understand, as much as the individual with the brain injury has lost control, a lot of the times their family members, their conservators who could be relations, have lost control as well. And that's why they may be agitated on a Friday, or, something small that we see as minimal. They may see it as something a lot bigger and a huge issue that we can then help them work through, resolve, and feel like they're being heard.
Turn it back into the small issue that it should be.
100%, because again, their life, as much as the survivor's life got turned upside down, their life got turned upside down.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Any projects or anything that you want to share with our listeners for things you have upcoming?
We'll be teaching a class at the Connecticut Women's Consortium in January, early January. It's based on supporting individuals with brain injuries clinically. That day I will not have my SLG executive director hat on. It will be my clinical LPC hat on. And just in terms of working with the population, utilizing Kubler-Ross's stages of grief model and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, combining those two models together in a way to support individuals with brain injuries. Again, nothing is individualized, so it's not a one-size-fits-all model. But what I'm hoping the takeaway is if you can see where that individual that you're trying to support is within these models on any specific day, it gives you an opportunity to meet them where they are. And brain injury, it's a journey. It's peaks and valleys. And there are going to be some days where people are doing well, they feel secure, and other days where they don't feel like they've got anything. And that's, for me, if I can help clinicians or agency employees understand the root of problematic behaviors typically is because the individual doesn't feel safe. So what are we going to do to try and help this individual feel safe? So that's where that training is going to be coming. So the Connecticut Women's Consortium, it's in Hamden, Connecticut. So I'm going to be doing an in-person training there. But often those trainings get switched over to virtual and they're recorded. And I know that one has 6 CEUs associated with it. It's a great organization. It's a non-profit, and they have some really, really good trainings. So that will be my next project.
Very cool. Very cool. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your organization, you in particular?
Yeah, our website, do I even need to do that anymore? It's supportedlivinggroup.org. Showing my age. It's supportedlivinggroup.org. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. You can reach out to me. My email address is on the Supported Living Group website. I'm very approachable, and I'll give you my email address and telephone number so you can put it up. Yeah, I'm very easy to reach out to. Any family members have any needs, and I'm happy to work with them.
I will include all of those in the show notes so people can click on those and find you as they need as well. Any last bits of wisdom that you'd like to share as we wrap up today?
No, I think what you're doing is really, really important, Mandy. I think helping to educate people, especially survivors and their families, is invaluable, because unfortunately a lot of the time the information just isn't out there. And we've been talking today about the waiver program in Connecticut. There's a huge amount of people that are not even aware of it. They're not even aware of the wait list or what they could potentially access and how to access it. So the more individuals are able to reach, knowledge is power. You're helping to empower huge populations of those individuals that are watching this podcast and the individuals that are sharing it. It's really, really important to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Of course. And thank you for being on here. I love sharing organizations like yours and things that help the brain injury community. My podcast started with all things related to brain health and wellness. And then when I had my own injury, it kind of shifted to mostly this brain injury topic, but it's so much needed. So I thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, leave a comment, and share it so that others can benefit. Please also consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. You can also go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to catch the latest info and get links on all of the social medias there. See you next time.